first time I interviewed you, we did the first ever lightning show on What Bitcoin Did. We've done 700 shows, but the first ever lightning show was with you.
It might have been, yeah. It was back in Boston in some weird
MIT
small room, and we just squirreled away and locked ourselves up in some room and recorded something.
Some professor's office.
Maybe.
Yeah. It was the first lightning show we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, Danny confirmed it this morning. It was the first lightning show. That one was possibly more than 4 years ago.
That was that must have been my first year at Blockstream, so 5.5 years ago.
Was it that? No, hold on. I started the podcast 5.5 years ago.
It was something February, because I actually managed to slip and fall in Boston.
It was icy.
I did not realize that Boston can be this cold.
Yeah. So would that would have been February 2019?
Possible.
Yeah.
I'm really bad with dates, by the way.
Well, if it was a February, it wouldn't have been 2000. So I launched the pod in 2017 in the November, but I only did a couple of shows that side of Christmas. And then I really got going in like the January, February, and it wasn't then.
Yeah.
So it would have been the year after. So that's 2019. Yeah. So that's it's over 4 years ago.
Yeah.
God, it's gone so quick, man. So much has happened.
We go back.
You're now a manager. So what are you saying? So you're not deving, or you're doing some dev, or you're guiding devs?
I'm still very much involved in the actual development of both Core Lightning and our new service Greenlight. But I also now have a team that I supervise. Peter Neurath, Eric De Smet, and Randy. They're all great developers, and they essentially joined my team to make Core Lightning more accessible. Essentially,
how do you like being a manager?
I'm definitely hoping that it will swing back to more developing at some point, but it's a new challenge. It's something that I haven't been doing before, and it's different. Not better, not worse, but you learn a new facet of how stuff is built, I guess.
Well, so listen, if we sat down in Boston 4 years, 7 months ago and talked about Lightning then, it's a long time ago.
It's been more than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Which used to be our go-to, hey, when's this going to be finished? 2 weeks.
Yeah, so...
Don't ask me if it's finished now.
But it's never finished, right?
It's never finished, yeah. We have a tendency of coming up with new stuff that pushes those 2 weeks out a bit more, and our ambitions are never satisfied, I guess.
So in those 4 years, 7 months... Yeah, how far have we got? How much has Lightning developed? How pleased are you with progress?
I'm very pleased. There's been a lot of progress already on the specification that we had back then. Right, 2019 was sort of the celebration of the version 1.0 of the specification. And we've implemented most of the stuff in there. Some of the more aspirational features are now in there. Core Lightning just released a support for splicing, for example, in the last release.
We spoke about that about 3 years ago.
Indeed, yeah. So 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks.
So some of the more aspirational stuff is now making it into the various clients, and while we all share sort of the same base set of features, everybody is still out there exploring new trade-offs of what they can do and how to achieve different things. Look at L&D's Taproot assets, for example. They've just published a version, or they are going to publish a version that includes Taproot asset support. We are now looking into integrating more and more of Taproot into the Lightning specification itself, starting from simple stuff like the gossip, make stuff more private by essentially not telling the rest of the world, hey, those are my funds, by the way. Watch them and see where I spend them.
Yeah, good. Fuck you, chain analysis.
Pretty much, yeah. And we are moving towards a world where we can do PTLCs, payment decorrelation, and all of the fun stuff that we've only been dreaming about the last time we spoke, I guess.
All the stuff I don't understand.
Which you shouldn't have to understand
Exactly.
in reality, right? I mean, ultimately, my realization and the reason why I started Greenlight was essentially listening to your podcast in part, saying that, hey, all of this stuff is interesting, but hey, I run a real life business and I don't have the capacity of digging in hours and hours and learning about all of the concepts on Bitcoin, and then on top we have to learn these hundreds and hundreds of new terms and ideas and totally different concepts from Bitcoin itself, and all of those you have to learn before you're even allowed by the community to touch Lightning, right? And
Christian, I didn't even want to entertain the idea of having to even think about opening channels.
yeah.
I didn't even want, when somebody said, will you open a channel with us? I don't want to open a channel. Why do I have to open a channel? What is a channel? What does it do? I want to have an address which I can send a receipt from. That's all I want. I want nothing else. I want everything else to just work.
Exactly, and going back to the splicing idea, it very much allows you to have this one address, and you give that address out, and you can receive on and off chain payments, for example. Why should you care about which of the layers you're using? Why should you even know about the existence of these different layers? And so I thought that we as a community are going at it in a very weird and a very techie focused way, which worked for me because I am a techie who enjoys these technical complexities. But essentially shaming people into not having the ability of touching any of these systems, any of the promised land, so to speak, of Bitcoin and Lightning, and before you have a deep understanding of how these things work, and learned about Bitcoin, learned about Lightning, the different concepts, and then sort of learned the best practices about how to manage your node and stuff like that. And it's very off-putting for anybody but techies, right?
But there's a reason it happens, because the original community of Bitcoiners outside of the cypherpunks was mainly techies. I mean, obviously some cypherpunks were techies, but it's mainly techies. So techies built something that did a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? And they were using the command line interface to do it, and it worked. And then we got some GUIs and they worked. But that's techies leading things. I always just revert back to when I had my very simple web company. We built websites, and the techies were brilliant. You couldn't do anything without them. But we would never put them in front of the client to say, solve this for them. You'd put a planner in front of them.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you'd have a UX designer, and then you'd have a functional spec, and the designer would create the designs that overlay the wireframes from the UX guy, and then that go into a brief to the techie to build it. And what you tend to find is that the designer would make things too pretty and not consider the technical requirements, and the techies would often make things too technical and not consider the interface. And you would kind of get this marriage in the middle, which would be the project manager. It would kind of marry, or the planner that would marry these things up. I feel like a lot of early Bitcoin development was just tech led.
Oh yeah.
And so, these became prominent voices, leading people in the world of Bitcoin. And I often found that when in the web agency, the tech guys, they actually couldn't understand why some people didn't understand tech the same way as them. They couldn't compute that. So why doesn't everybody understand this? But some people just don't. But it's really good because in the last few years, we have seen the UX designers and the interface designers come in and just make this easier to use. And so that shaming of people is starting to lose weight.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, I'm probably to blame for that as much as anybody else. I joined Bitcoin back when it in 2009. When the value really was zero, right? The only thing that could get you interested in Bitcoin was the technology behind it, and it happened to match quite nicely for me. And so, as somebody who grew up with this stuff, who sort of took on all of the details and helped develop some of it, it comes very natural to somebody like me to essentially say, okay, yeah, that's trivial, right? It's not like everybody should get this. Come on, it's easy. But ultimately, listening to all of the different voices that about difficulties of people wanting to use these technologies, but not wanting to invest all of the time it takes to do so in a correct manner. Understandably so, right? People have real lives outside of Bitcoin and whatever you have. You realize that you have to somehow make this easier and make this more accessible. And so what we try to do is to start and think, hey, how much of the sort of management burden, how much of the security burden can we take away from users while they are learning, while they are sort of reaping the benefits of using Bitcoin. And once they have seen what Lightning and Bitcoin can do for them, now is the time that we can expose them to all of these details. And if they're interested, they can get educated. They can learn about all of these techie details that are really interesting to me. But maybe they only become interesting once you've seen the upside to you, right? And so what Greenlight tries to do is essentially to take on some of those management burdens to the infrastructure for running a Lightning node, and leave you with the bare minimum of responsibilities, and that's keeping your keys, because not your keys, not your coins.
So this comes down to an interesting kind of area and point. So there's a number of things in Bitcoin I've refused to learn. I just don't want to. And people are like, you own the big Bitcoin podcast. You should learn this. I'm like, no, I refuse to learn it because I don't want to, because I want to have the experience that others do. So XPubs, for a long time, I just refused it. Somebody said, you need to. I was like, no, I don't want to learn. I don't want to know. I don't want to care. It's too technical. My dad will never get it. My sister will never get it. My brother, none of us will. Just figure it out so I don't have to learn it. I didn't run a node for a long time. The first couple of years in Bitcoin, I didn't even have a node. And I stand by these principles, but I also confession, I've never fully run a Lightning node. I tried to set one up. It was a pain. But the thing that actually turned me off it was when I was out in Pacific Bitcoin last year. We had a little Rail Bedford shop, and you could buy your merch in Bitcoin. And so we had a number of people come and pay on Lightning, and we had people use Strike, and people were using Wallet of Satoshi. Every now and again, someone would come and do it where they've actually connected to their Lightning node. There was so many painful experiences. Like one guy's like 15 minutes, kept failing, kept having issues. And every time someone was trying to pay from their node, it was always an issue. Yeah. So I was like, well, I don't need this. And there's a comparable. When I was out in Argentina, people wanted Tether on Tron. And the reason they wanted Tether on Tron is they wanted stable dollars, and that was the cheapest, fastest network. Yeah. The free market of needing dollars said that is the best solution. Well, the free market for me of wanting to use Lightning is Wallet of Satoshi. Yes, there's Phoenix. Yes, there's Moon. Yes, you can run your own node. But I feel like Wallet of Satoshi has won the free market because the experience is tap works. Yeah. Tap works. Every single time it just works. And so what my hope is that from what little I know about Greenlight, is that this might be potentially a game changer for people wanting a very easy wallet solution.
I'm definitely hoping so, because as you rightfully point out, right, if you have essentially two options for participating in the Lightning network. One is to go through all the growing pains and getting your node set up and actually learning how to run it, and then potentially failing because you're not managing it, right? I do have a day job as well. I don't spend hours and hours every day essentially managing liquidity. I want to use Lightning because I want to send and receive payments every once in a while. It's not my day job to manage Lightning nodes. And the other option would be to essentially throw up your hands and say, hey, okay, custodial it is then. Because custodial services have the best possible user experience, right? You have a support crew that is there 24/7 managing the one node which every participant or every user is then mapped onto, and it's in their best interest to do so in a way that maximizes the chance of success. And so what we essentially tried was to say, hey, is there some middle point in this spectrum, right, between non-custodial and custodial? Is there something we can do where we can say, okay, we help users with the setup of their node, we help them essentially synchronize the gossip, we help them manage their databases and ensure that databases don't get lost. Funny story is while I was walking over here, I was essentially helping somebody recover their Lightning node because they restored an old backup and suddenly their node was saying, hey, you restored, this is not safe, right? And people run into these issues. And so our goal was essentially to add a new point to the spectrum between custodial and non-custodial and see how much of the management burden we can take on without having our users surrender their keys.
Right.
Because the last thing I want to do is being responsible for somebody else's funds. That would be, I couldn't sleep at night if I had those keys, right? And that meshes very much with our what used to be our motto for Blockstream was "Can't be evil."
Can't be rather than Google's "Don't be."
Very much inspired by Google's "Don't be evil" is we try to build out technologies where we bind our hands behind our backs so that we can't do anything nefarious, and many of these will then result in products where we essentially build the product and give them to our users, right, and say, hey, good luck. And Greenlight goes a bit a different direction where we say, hey, we actually want to hold your hand through the process. And ultimately, once you have seen the benefits and once you've learned about all of this, you're free to take your node and run it wherever you want, right? You can set up your Raspberry Pi at home if you want. So it is very much an onboarding experience where we try to help people to slowly onboard, see the benefits, and then expose them to the complexities if they choose to.
Didn't Google drop the "Don't be evil"?
Because they can't probably claim that they aren't evil anymore.
Well, that's the thing. You know, when you come out with the motto of "Don't be evil," you have to always maintain that. Otherwise, you said, "Do you know what? I've made the bargain. I'm now happy to be evil." And I think it's probably to do with like expanding into China and agreeing to censorship around Tiananmen Square and things like that. But it's kind of like, so you've made billions, and now you're saying I'm going to be evil. Yeah, guys, we used to not be evil. Now we're evil. Like, what the fuck's that all about?
It's a very, very bad look to drop a motto like that. Yeah.
It's like you guys going, yeah, sometimes we can be evil. Like, what the fuck's that about? Okay, Greenlight, explain it. Explain it to me like I'm me. Like, what is it? How does it work? How will I use it?
Yeah, so if you're using anything like Wallet of Satoshi or Spark or any of the web-based front ends, you very much already have an experience that is similar to Greenlight. What you usually have is some server running your node and a client that talks to it, right? That can be your front end, that can be your accounting software, that can be some security system that makes audit logs and stuff like that. So we have these two components: a server running on your server usually, or Wallet of Satoshi in case it's a custodial system, and the client which presents you with a front end, scans your QR codes and stuff like that. Now, the idea of Greenlight is what happens if if every single user gets their core Lightning node. We run stock core Lightning on our servers, and we rip out the part that is actually handling keys. And so we still have the system where we have a client on your phone, on your laptop, wherever on your iPhone smartwatch or whatever, talking to a server. This server now, instead of running on your infrastructure or Wallet of Satoshi's infrastructure, runs on Blockstream servers. The node doesn't have the keys anymore, so we need to have some place where we store the keys, and we simply do the same that we did for the client connection, and we move it back to the user. So the user has the client and has a signer, and the node is just a dumb operational process that manages state and doesn't do much else. And so what you end up doing is you now can, as an app developer, you essentially take our API, that is our programming interface, allowing you to get access to our servers, and in a matter of seconds, you can essentially say, "Hey, spin up a new node for a new user." The keys for that user reside on the app itself, right, on the user's device. And the node is spun up in our cloud. And once that is spun up, the client essentially connects to it and can start performing operations on it, sending, receiving payments, opening channels, you name it. Whenever something is touching the funds, as in, hey, I'm receiving funds, or I'm opening a channel, or I'm sending funds, or closing channels, we'll need a signature from the keys that are associated with those funds, right? Those keys reside on the user device. And so what the node does is essentially it sends that signature request to the device. Now, that all sounds very, very fancy or not, depending on how you look at it. The real trick is, how can we make sure that an attacker or a Blockstream operator having access to the server, to the node itself, can't do anything with the funds, right? If I were accessing the node and I were to say, "Hey, send all funds to Christian's address," and the signer sees that, they will probably just sign it off, right? And so we had to take the signer and add additional verification on top of it. And the way we do it is essentially every single client you register with your node has an identity. And the signer will verify that, oh yes, this payment instruction that I'm now being asked to sign off actually came from an authenticated user that I trust, and not some attacker having access to the node on the server. And so this end-to-end verification is the core innovation here. And we actually just merged an update yesterday on it, so it's very much still in flux, but we're getting there. And so the overall flow is very much like you download an app, you open the app, get to write down maybe a seed, maybe not, depending on the decisions of whoever developed the app and whether they trust seeds or not. Mm-hmm. After the seed is being stored, Blockstream servers are getting asked to spin up a node. The client connects to that node. You can now interact with the node. As soon as you touch funds, you send instructions to the node, which are then forwarded to the signer. The signer will use those instructions to verify, hey, yes, this is actually Peter asking me to send a payment, and only then sends back the signatures required to perform these actions.
So you haven't just built it for you guys to build into your own wallet. You've built this for everyone.
So I built it very much for my own needs, okay. But it is obviously something that is very powerful. So I mentioned before that end users are sort of our target audience here, right? Because end users are the ones that need the assistance.
It's me.
You would be a perfect customer for us. The problem is I really do suck at front-end design. User experience, user interfaces, I can't do it.
I can help with that.
Maybe we should collaborate then. The core point is that end users are but part of our target audience, mm-hmm. right? Who else is suffering from these issues? App developers. App developers are having a really hard time to develop apps that are integrated with Lightning, because they usually have to bundle the Lightning node with their application itself. And that requires them to learn all of the intricacies of Lightning, but also how to code best practices into the node. Because once your app is on the phone of a user, you're not getting to touch it anymore. That would be you commandeering their funds, right? And so channel management and all of that stuff either has to be exposed to end users or you have to automate it. And trust me, automating is really, really hard because we don't even know what best practices are. And so what we the target audience that we are talking to more directly is app developers.
Okay.
Because they can now use our programming interface to spin up nodes on our infrastructure, integrate with just using RPC calls, and not care about any of the rest.
There must be other benefits though as well. My assumption is the biggest benefit is this makes the Lightning Network more decentralized.
It makes it more accessible to many more people. I wouldn't say that it makes it more decentralized.
No. Is there any centralization components to this thing?
So,
like, are we centralizing a whole part of the Lightning Network under Blockstream?
So it always is a bit of a tricky question when it comes to decentralization. What constitutes decentralization? If you consider decentralization the fact that individuals are taking care of their own funds and managing their own nodes and essentially not a single entity sort of merging all of these things together under one umbrella, then we are indeed increasing decentralization.
Right.
If you consider decentralization that a single entity can essentially see what happens on the network, then we are increasing centralization.
Okay, so you're decentralizing the sovereignty, but perhaps centralizing the infrastructure.
Exactly. So
that's a trade-off.
That is very much by the nature of the system. Is if we want to help people to set up databases and manage watchtowers and stuff like that, we very much have to make sure that we have access to that. Another thing that we have is essentially we do see traffic on our nodes. Which we can then use to turn around and essentially inform the development of the open source core Lightning again. Right. So there is a bit of a trade-off here between privacy and information we can use to improve the open source core Lightning. And we use that a bit as a nudge for users to actually offboard eventually. Like I said, my ultimate goal is to educate users and then giving them the knowledge to run these nodes themselves. At which point they'd be fully self-sovereign individuals on the Lightning Network, just like any techie who has had the inspiration of digging in right from the get-go. As such, we are decentralizing ownership and centralizing a bit of the infrastructure. With an eye towards then hopefully offboarding people again into their own infrastructure.
How much of a challenge is it with the different implementations of Lightning with doing this kind of work? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of base chain is now core. I know Luke has his NOTs implementation, but generally speaking, tell me how wrong I am, but I feel like almost everyone just uses core.
So for layer one, it's definitely the case that Bitcoin Core has almost a monopoly on it, and that is by necessity. To be perfectly honest, right? The Bitcoin blockchain protocol was essentially never documented. I tried in 2011 to write the protocol specification, which then later got renamed to documentation, because it turns out that there are so many minute details inside of Bitcoin Core that are important, right? That you can't get wrong or can't get differently wrong than Bitcoin Core without falling out of consensus. And so it was renamed to documentation because it's an effort to document, but it is not authoritative, right?
Yeah.
That is very much different from how Lightning works, however, where we started right from the get-go with the specification, which is authoritative. And as such, we have, whenever there is a disagreement between different clients, there is a document we can refer to and say, hey, the document says X, implementation A does X, implementation B does it slightly different, so the implementation B is at fault. Or many times we discover, oh, it's underspecified, so let's hammer out the details and decide together who is wrong, and then reinstate that correctness again, which you can't do on a base layer.
But wouldn't a monopoly on the Lightning protocol also be better?
It would be different. So monopolies are always dangerous. I'm just reading Cory Doctorow's Seize the Means of Networking, which very much speaks about monopolies, but talks about big tech, but monopolies in general. And in my mind, monopolies have to be very well sort of argumented and justified. And I think we have that justification in Bitcoin on-chain because any deviation in behavior would constitute a fork, right? If my implementation were to flip a bit on any signatures, then any signatures I create are invalid on the other side, right?
And we don't want to fork.
And we don't want to fork because essentially the trust in the system itself comes from the stability that the system provides. This is no longer true for layers we build on top, where we can be much more experimental, and we have been much more experimental as well, because we are now working with a subset of all of the users of Bitcoin. A subset that has opted into the experiment, right? Such as building Lightning channels, building DLC contracts, building more advanced, more experimental stuff, experimental L2 implementations, stuff like that. And so the trade-offs are very much different, and I think it would be very hard to justify a monopoly on the Lightning Network at this stage.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so is Greenlight live? Can I play with it without knowing I'm playing with it at the moment?
So we currently have a developer preview that is going on. The way it works is you essentially ping us, and we give out invite codes to anybody who is interested. An invite code allows you to to register and spin up a node on our infrastructure, and then use the programming interfaces to talk to it. And for a couple of partners that we are collaborating very closely with, namely Breeze and Green, and a couple of others as well, which I probably shouldn't mention because they want to announce themselves, I guess.
But they'll be announced by the time this comes out.
They will choose their own time of announcement, I guess.
Who will it might be?
But anyway, Breeze and Green are essentially live.
Hold on, Green is yours.
Green is ours, yes. So guess where the name Greenlight comes from?
I have no idea.
I'm very bad at naming, and technically I was barred from ever naming a product again after the whole L2 fiasco.
What was that?
It turns out that the internal name for L2 was always the letter L2 as a number. And at some point, somebody made a joke. Oh, you shouldn't use the phonetic spelling L2, and it stuck.
Oh yeah, it did.
And more sort of a bit less funny was that at the same time the whole Me Too movement was going on Twitter,
right?
So people were confused about our names and hashtags. So it was strange for a while.
Yeah, but that's just there's no plan to that. You can't help that. Okay, so when can I play with it?
You can if you are a developer,
Nope, we know that.
you probably don't want to play with it right now directly.
No, I just playing with it means me playing with the wallet and not knowing I'm using it.
So there is a green variant where you can turn on the experimental features. I actually have it here.
Not on my green wallet.
Not on your green wallet, I think. Ooh. There is some way of enabling it. I probably should ask the green team for it.
You should ask. You should wait for the green team.
And Breeze has a version of their client which is backed by Greenlight.
Okay.
And the really interesting part about that is you can use both and have it be backed by the same node.
Okay.
So very much like one issue that we had with users essentially bundling the node with their application was that every single application had their own node. And so you'd be splitting funds. And if you wanted to try out a new chat app, well, you'd essentially have to drain funds from one node, move them over to the new app, and then open channels. And only then you could find out that it's actually crap and you don't want to use it.
So this show's coming out after your Bitcoin Amsterdam talk by design.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got an announcement there.
Yeah.
Is the announcement that Greenlight's ready?
The announcement very much is that Greenlight is ready for end users to use, yes.
So that's the big announcement.
That's the big announcement.
So will there be a live wallet by Amsterdam?
There will be a live wallet in the form of Breeze and Green, yes.
Brilliant. So that's about when I can play with it.
That's when you can play with it.
Oh my God, this is amazing. I think it's super cool. So, but it leads me, because I've got other questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've got two main questions that no one's ever given me a really good answer for. So.
Ooh, that sounds ominous.
Yeah, well, so in a future world of a much smaller block reward, much higher base chain usage, much higher on-chain fees, you still need an on-chain transaction to open a Lightning channel. So say I'm a brand new Bitcoiner and it's 2030 and on-chain fees or wherever they are, and I want to get involved in Bitcoin. I can't afford on-chain fees because I just want $100, £100 of Bitcoin, and on-chain fees might be super high. It just is prohibitive to me. So how can I? Is there a way I will be able to get on Bitcoin without owning a UTXO?
Excellent question, and I just realized why you never got a straight answer for it, because nobody knows the answer.
Yeah, this is my issue.
Neither do I, by the way. Very much all of these scaling solutions get us 1, 2, 3 orders of magnitude, and many people then sort of extrapolate and say, hey, this is the solution going forward forever. Whereas in reality, we will bump against the limitations of Lightning. Now there's two options we have here, right? Either we evolve Lightning, or we come up with something completely different, and it just is called something else, right?
Well, because I think it leads to a bigger point. Is that if in a future world, most of the people we onboard into Bitcoin is just into Lightning. Say that's the future world we end up in. Can you ever be truly self-sovereign if you're only on Lightning because you're possibly on somebody else's UTXO or their channel, which they could close at some point?
Well, I mean, being on somebody else's UTXO in this case is a bit of a mischaracterization, right? It's co-owned by you.
Yes, okay.
Your signature is needed to determine what happens with those funds. And that is very much the basis for all of these off-chain protocols, where we essentially say, hey, we pool funds, and then we go into a separate room and decide what happens with those funds, and we'll come back to the chain only once we know how to settle it, right?
Let's go back a step. I download a new wallet, and I deposit some sats in there. It's a Lightning wallet. I've got 50,000 sats in there that somebody sent me. what's the UTXO behind that? Is it everybody? Who's sharing that UTXO?
That very much depends on which kinds of solution we end up with, right? It could be a multi-party channel where essentially hundreds of people pool their funds and co-decide what happens with those funds. It could be something like a Fedimint, where we delegate control of the UTXO to a federation, or it could be a custodial solution, right? I'm not one to sort of rail against custodial solutions. I just think we should give people the ability of choosing something more secure.
So in a custodial solution, you can be rugged.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
you're not really self-sovereign.
Exactly.
Because it's not your keys. Okay. In a federated solution, you can be rugged, but there's lower risk in that it may be fairly transparent who the federation is.
Yeah.
OB often talks about like a community one, and there's you have the reputations of the people. I'm not 100% convinced of that. It's still not your keys.
I mean, at that point, you might have an external system, such as a legal system, that might actually act as your safety net, right?
Well, this is where I wonder where we're going long term. So currently with a bank, if I go to a bank, it's an IOU. My money, if I go to my Revolut account, what I see is an IOU, and the only time I'm sovereign is when I withdraw it, or at the time where the payment's confirmed, because I know that payment's gone, so I pay for something. But essentially, I'm not sovereign. The bank has the money; it's an IOU, and I'm only protected up to £80,000. It feels like with Bitcoin, we're potentially building a new version of this with just a different set of rules, a better trust framework, a better technology, and ultimately a fixed limit currency that backs it. It brings more honesty to it. But in the end, it feels like we are having to redesign a new banking infrastructure because there is a limitation on the scaling of UTXOs.
I wouldn't say that the UTXOs is the limiting factor here.
The cost of on-chain could be the limiting factor of getting people UTXOs.
Yeah, I think it very much is a spectrum, right, of solutions that we want to offer here. The spectrum of current options that we have in the banking sector are essentially all custodial.
Yeah.
And with the avenue of Bitcoin, we enable people to take charge of their own systems, and there's various grays in here, right? Federations and non-custodial and so on. And ultimately, I think the major limitation here is that using the fully non-custodial self-sovereign solutions is very technically challenging, and some people might choose not to use that.
It's not the technically challenging bit of using base chain that worries me. If I can set up a wallet, if I can set up a multi-sig, if I can manage my UTXOs, most people can do that, right? And it's getting easier and easier. My worry is the cost of onboarding millions/billions into this. So I've just been out to Lebanon, previously Argentina, very, very high poverty rates, millions of people living under the poverty line, like high double percentage figures. And, you go somewhere like that and you share some photos, people are like, Bitcoin fixes this. And most of the time I ignore them because they haven't been there and haven't seen the reality. But if the reality is just that we want to get millions of people onboarded, I don't think we're going to onboard billions of people into the base chain.
No.
Okay. But we constantly say, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. But I feel enough people there for having the conversation. It's like, well, yes, it's not your keys, not your Bitcoin, but the future of Bitcoin for a lot of people will be not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Because there will be a spectrum of custodial, semi-custodial, federated trust models that most people will have to use. So is that a blind spot, or is that something people are avoiding, or is there a belief that actually, no, these will all be sold as well?
I think we are essentially pushing in two directions, right? One is technical feasibility, and that is mostly the front I've been working on. Essentially, making sure that stuff becomes easier to use, stuff becomes more scalable. With multi-party channels, we can build arbitrary large off-chain protocols that essentially replicate all of the attributes that on-chain payments have, still being anchored in on-chain payments. And the other dimension is that we obviously want people to go towards a more self-custodial solution, and that goes hand in hand with simplifying, but also with scaling. I can't say how we're going to do it, because otherwise I would have published it as a paper already.
Come on, man.
Then again, I don't write papers that much anymore. But I'm relatively optimistic that when the time comes, we will have the solution.
With these multi-person UTXOs, I can't remember how you explain it, but like multiple people sharing a UTXO. How would a group of people agree to close that? Would everyone have to sign, or a certain percent? Is it essentially a multi-sig on that UTXO?
It is very much a multi-sig, yes.
And could it get to the point, is there a limit? Can hundreds of people share a UTXO? Is it that possible? And then could you get to the point where essentially some UTXOs will almost certainly never close because it won't have enough people agreeing to closing it? So you could have permanently open UTX channels.
So to be safe, all of the current constructions of these off-chain protocols allow an individual user to essentially say, "Hey, I'm taking my toys and going home." Okay. Right? Essentially, taking the off-chain system, the off-chain protocol, and settling on-chain, moving their funds out, and then the others can do whatever they want. And there are very interesting constructions right now being discussed on a mailing list where we can use covenants to actually allow us to expel inactive users from such an off-chain system, so that if the number of participants becomes larger, then the chances of one of them not being reactive and not being there to sign off on the next change increases. And so there are constructions where we can say, hey, Peter has fallen asleep. Maybe he wants his funds back on chain, and the rest of us can essentially say, "Hey, okay, let's go on chain, split out Peter's funds, and then recreate that system." Very much like we do with splicing already today. And so there are interactivity requirements for which we are looking for solutions, and there are scalability requirements where we try to increase the size of these multi-party channels. And another very interesting research topic, since we're talking about research topics, is the issue of dynamic memberships. Right? If I have
what is that? I've never
if I have a group of 100 people, and now Peter comes and wants to join this, how can we make Peter part of this group without touching the chain itself, right? Because you can't trust the remaining 100 people that they haven't sort of an agreement inside that they are collaborating to defraud you, right? So how can we make sure that even if you join after the fact, we can prove to you that this is the latest state, and yes, indeed, you own $100 on this system.
Where are we at with covenants? Because I know it's something Jeremy Rubin worked on. I know he has some challenges with his ideas for implementation, that he didn't manage to build up enough support. I think he's pissed off about it, but I think people also at the same time respected what he was trying to do, and they want covenants. Like, by the way, I don't even know what the fuck covenants are, but I know the background. Like, where are we at with that? So
I'm definitely not a covenants expert, but the way that I understand it is essentially that you can mark an output for certain restrictions in future spending, right? So that you can say, hey, I have these 100 Bitcoins, and they can only be spent by either sending them back to me or after a timeout they can thaw and be sent somewhere else.
So there's essentially a security element.
Vinculating upfront what may happen to those funds later.
Yeah,
and you can see that in off-chain protocols, this is something very powerful, right? We as a group can decide, hey, either A or B happens. Nothing else can happen to those funds, and that is something that helps us limit what might happen to those funds as when it comes to security. Those funds can be stolen, but we also can build things like delayed settlements on top of it, right? If I know that when I send those funds on chain, they can only be used to split up in 1,000 smaller chunks, and those individual chunks go to the 1,000 participants of my off-chain protocol. It can be very cheap for me to essentially settle an off-chain protocol into one output, and then sort of wait for fees to settle down and be less expensive during the night, for example, and split them out to the individual participants.
There's a good defense of the $5 wrench attack with those as well, right?
Yeah, you essentially took away power from yourself, from your future self to divulge or manipulate your own funds in the case of a threat.
And I could also, I guess, with covenants, do something for my children's inheritance about where these funds can go and when.
Yeah, and you can disintermediate many of the interactions that might require third parties right now. And the idea is relatively old. I think at least the first time I read about it was by Kanzor about the vaults system, where you can have funds frozen and then thaw them up for later use, or sort of move them away if the thawing was triggered by somebody who shouldn't have access to those funds.
Interesting.
And there's been a lot of development lately. And Jeremy Rubin's OpsCTV is definitely among the more well-known proposals. But there, as is so often the case in Bitcoin, it ends up essentially we end up everybody diverging into different directions and sort of exploring, and at some point we converge again towards a single solution that sort of integrates all of the learnings that we had during the experimental phase. And the Lightning Protocol is one such example, right? We met in 2016 in Milan for the first spec meeting, but that's not when we started developing Lightning, right? The Async team, the Lightning Labs team, and the Blockstream team were all working in different directions. And at the end of the day, we sat down and said, hey, look, we learned a lot. Now let's combine our knowledge and learnings and make this the best protocol we can. There is no point in us creating 3 separate non-interoperable networks.
Yeah.
Right? We want to have a system where everybody can talk to everybody. And I expect the same to happen eventually for covenants as well. There is just a lot of different proposals flying out there right now, among which any prevout, which is one of my proposals, that can be used to simulate a lot of CTV. And CTV can be used to emulate together with checksig from Stack to emulate APO. But anyway, ultimately there are a lot of different proposals, and we essentially now need to discuss and figure out, hey, is one of these solutions the end all be all solution that we want? Are we okay with the powerful primitives that we can build with it? Do we want to be a bit more paternalistic and prevent people from shooting themselves in the foot? I'm probably not in that camp.
Okay.
I think that people should have the ability of shooting themselves in the foot if they want to.
Back to Greenlight. So, is there anything we haven't covered on Greenlight? Or is it just a case we need to get it out there and have people see it and not see it, but essentially use it?
I would very much like to see it being used and to see how well it holds up. It is a system that we have been working on for the last 2 years, and so far we've had about 10 million sessions already, as in nodes spinning up and spinning down. Oh, that's probably an interesting fact. One of the scalability pluses that we have is that the node is only it only needs to be operational as long as you have your app open on your phone or on your laptop, and once that app is closed, we don't have access to the keys anymore, right? We can't send the signer any more requests, so we just turn that node off.
Let me ask something. With regards to receiving payments, you have to be online, right, to receive payments. So if the phone is off and the node is off, does that mean you can't receive payments?
There's an intermediate solution for that and a long-term solution for that. The intermediate one is essentially that we can be told by your peer partners that there is an incoming payment, right? They can ping us, and we will try to summon your phone, for example, and by essentially you have an incoming payment that is being held for like 10 seconds at the edge of Greenlight. Then Greenlight gets pinged. We ping your phone. Your phone connects. We spin up the node, reconnects to the peer, and at that point we have the ability to essentially forward that payment to you. And so it's a very reactive system where we can essentially by reaching out to the applications, we can summon those nodes just in time for the payment to terminate.
Does that all happen without me having to do anything? It's
Yes.
just, okay. Because what I'm thinking is, this is a great option for me, but I also run businesses that accept Bitcoin. Sometimes I'm asleep and I'm not there to check my phone, and I don't want payments to fail. I just want them to keep coming.
So there's sort of an extension to that, namely that remember that I told you that you don't have to, you can add as many front ends to your node as you wanted, right? The same is true for signers, right? As long as you have one signer online, and that could be a smart plug that you plug into your outlet back home. As long as one signer is online, you can essentially accept payments, or we can spin up the node. We will have access to the keys to terminate that payment. The longer term solution will obviously be that Matt Corallo has a proposal for async payments, where payments are deferred until the recipient is online. And we essentially trigger those payments in the background when you happen to be online.
Okay. And is there a lot of infrastructure work that Blockstream have had to do to make this work?
Oh, very much so. So we essentially have the control plane that allows you to spin up nodes on demand. Like I said, it takes about a second for us to provision your new node and have it running on our system. That includes database management, that includes the host management, that includes backups for the databases. With Greenlight, I don't have to answer Telegram to guide you through recovery for your node because,
whilst you're walking to a interview,
we made it so that we can assist you in those cases. And we can spin up and down those nodes in less than a second. So by the time you open the app, your node is already ready. We have a watchtower system in place. We have all of the what I like to call the circulatory system as in Bitcoin. So since we need access to the Bitcoin network, we very much have to run a Bitcoin Core node that allows you to get access to the Bitcoin network, and all of that stuff is happening behind the scenes, and you don't have to care about it at all. It very much, if you've ever worked against one of the custodial options of spinning up a node and then sort of backing your shop with it or something like that, the experience should be very similar, with the difference that now there's an additional component that you have to manage, which is a signer. But it's very much just an application that runs in the background, and you don't actually have to interact with it at all. Trying to recreate the custodial experience in a non-custodial setting, essentially.
I mean, I love it. I can't wait to see it. want to play with it. I want to play with something that I don't actually get to see, which I know benefits me, benefits Bitcoin.
See, deep down, you're a techie anyway.
No, I'm the opposite. I want to play with it knowing that I don't have to do anything, that it's all done for me. To me, this is the end goal for all of this stuff. And, and I salute anyone who does. I salute you for trying to find these solutions, because I do think there are a lot of Bitcoiners who have a massive blind spot around tech. They say people should learn these things. You have a podcast, you should learn it. It's like, no. You should fix it so I don't have to, and I feel very strongly about that.
Exactly. You should be free where you decide to invest your time in, right?
Yeah.
It's not up to us to shame you into.
Well, it's not even about shame. It's just better for Bitcoin. It's better for individual users. It's better for my dad if he.
No, I'm saying the Bitcoin community attitude is usually to shame people into, oh, you're not a real Bitcoin. You don't run your own Bitcoin core node. How could you?
Yeah.
A little known secret is that for a long time I haven't been running Bitcoin core myself.
What?
Yes.
What? Look. If Christian Decker can get away with it, I can get away with it. Man, wow. Is there anything I've not asked you wish I had?
No, I think we did a really good job of explaining what Greenlight is and what it can do. We are planning to continue building out many of these features. Ultimately, we have integrations with LSPs going, so we hope you don't have to decide on looking at your channels. But if you wanted to look at channels and wanted to manage them yourself, of course you could.
Nope.
And there are quite a few expansions that we are looking into building out. One such extension is essentially these are currently end user nodes, right?
Okay.
They are not really meant to back an enterprise or a business. But eventually we want to take these learnings and offer specialized solutions based on the same technology. Businesses still get to manage to keep their keys and not tell them to us, but at the same time have the same user experience as end users do. And for that, we are also building out some more advanced capabilities that you couldn't replicate with in-app nodes. For example, we have an entire permission system built on runes that allow you to restrict what individual clients can do with your node.
Right.
So, for example, you could have a point of sale that is only allowed to create invoices. You could have a back office that is allowed to send and receive payments, and then you could have an accountant that gets an audit log while the business is open in real time. And more interestingly even is that the signer is the place where everything has to go through, right? Mm-hmm. And as such, that is a perfect place for us to place an audit trail, right? Only stuff that is signed off by the signer can even affect your funds. So why not put an accounting audit trail just there to see, hey, Peter just sent $10 to this coffee place. Maybe I'll check it out later as well.
Love it. Well, listen, if people want to find out more, where do they go?
So we have a Greenlight landing page on at blockstream.com/Greenlight. And we will have a sign-up page to get access to the to Greenlight without having to contact us by mail this time, and at greenlight.blockstream.com.
And you will be presenting at Bitcoin Amsterdam, telling everyone about this, which they'll have heard it by now.
Well, they'll probably have heard it by now. Yes.
They would have heard it because this is coming out after that. Christian, thanks for coming in. Thanks for everything you do. Let's not wait 3 years again. Let's try and do this again sooner. Let's get you to Bedford.
Yeah, let's go to Bedford. I wanted to go to Bedford this time around, but
we'll be ready. We're not going anywhere.
You know how timing is, right?
We'll be ready for you, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Always.
It's been a blast.
Thank you.